Hi everyone, welcome to Miss Adams Teaches Poetry. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at Shakespeare's Sonnet 116. This is a poem where Shakespeare expresses his understanding of what true love is. He starts by talking in the negatives about what love isn't, before going on to express how love is without time and how love is this kind of guiding fixed mark. It's a very romantic, very passionate poem. It's part of the selection of his sonnets that was written to his fair youth rather than to his dark lady. And perhaps there is an aspect, if we read it as a romantic poem as opposed to a platonic poem, then what he is talking about really is the notion of true love and spiritual union, as opposed to the traditional sense of marriage, where of course, think contextually in Shakespeare's time, it is not often that people married for love. It was more likely to be a kind of contract between parents of kind of similar statuses. So you could argue that if it is sort of expressing romantic feelings for this young man, that it's all about spiritual union and a meeting of the minds, as opposed to what the expectation was at the time. Without further ado, let's get started. I love this poem. Okay, let's start with the opening line of the first quatrain. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Now, this is quite a difficult line to understand straight off, and that's because of the inverted syntax, the fact that the word order is slightly unusual. You can also call that hyperbaton if you wanted to be really fancy. But the general message behind this is that when love is between two people that really know each other, true minds, that's when you're not going to sort of suffer difficulties. So he uses the adjective true here in this noun phrase, true minds, to suggest a sort of purity in love. You know, love, when it's a spiritual union, is not going to suffer difficulties. Impediments means hindrances, you know, things that get in the way. And it's interesting because this word is associated with traditional marriage services. You know, that moment where, you know, the vicar or the priest says, if anyone knows any lawful impediments. You know, why these two people shouldn't be married. So it's a very, very traditional word, but Shakespeare's perhaps being a little bit naughty here because he's subverting it. He's saying, actually, those marriages, well, think contextually, of his time, marriages were contracts. They were financial as opposed to love. Your parents decided who you were going to marry. You know, love matches were very, very rare. So he's actually saying, no, it's real love that doesn't kind of suffer these sort of difficulties. Obviously, love that is organized, that isn't a true spiritual union, that's when you're going to admit impediments. Then he goes on to explain what he really means by love. So love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds. So this little clause here is using antithesis, but when you read the, when you focus on the enjambement, the run-on line, he says, love is not love which alters when it alteration finds. So love doesn't change if there's a change in circumstance. So if things are different to how they were when you met, your love doesn't go away, you adapt. Or bends with the remover to remove. So you've got a little bit of a metaphor here. Remover to remove, bends to the remover, with the remover to remove means if one part of the union takes their love away, then the person left behind isn't going to immediately switch off their love or go, no, I don't love you either. So there's a sort of almost suggestion that you fight for love here. Now we've got this really lovely type of repetition called polytoton, very difficult to say, which basically is the type of repetition where you use the same kind of stem, but it might have slightly different grammatical functions. So alter and alteration, you know, it's the verb and the noun, the remover to remove, again, noun, then the verb, but it's the same kind of word stem. So quite clever little bit of wordplay there from Shakespeare. And this, I think, is one of my favourite bits of the poem, because this quatrain is really saying what love is. So quatrain 1 was saying what love shouldn't do, and now this is saying what love is. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. So we've got an interjection here, the oh no, so it's demonstrating real heightened emotion. It is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. So we've got this personification here. Tempests means storms, if you weren't sure. And an ever fixed mark, i.e. it doesn't move. So this is the beginning of the metaphor describing love as being this star. The fact that it is never shaken, it suggests that love is consistent, but it's also resilient. It doesn't react and change. It is the star to every wandering bark. Okay, so a much sort of clearer metaphor here. To every wandering bark. Now, the bark is actually, technically it's synecdoche, but you could say metaphor for a boat. And the fact that it's a wandering bark, what we're doing here is developing or extending a navigation metaphor, that love is a star that acts as a guide and navigating tool to any ship that's lost its way. So love guides when you're feeling lost. Whose worth is unknown, so that worth here means value, although his height be taken. So this is extending the metaphor further. So basically what he's alluding to here is the fact that at the time, sailors that use stars as a navigation tool, they might not know all of the kind of dimensions of a star, but they could look at the height of the star to the horizon. So although his height be taken, so you know how far up from the horizon the star is, you don't know what its true worth is. And so that's a continuing the metaphor of love. So you've got a certain idea of love's kind of parameters, but you can't take in its sort of full worth and glory. So a little bit of hyperbole within that metaphor as well. Okay, slightly harder stanza here, this quatrain. Love is not time's fool. So lovely little bit of personification of both love and time. Though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. So the rosy lips and cheeks is your image of health and beauty. And he's saying that your health and beauty doesn't last because the time with a bending sickle compass come, this is an allusion to death, like the end of time. A sickle is a tool, you know, that you would use in the harvest. So he's saying that, you know, love is not limited to your youth. It lasts past that. It's not dependent on time. And then we get another image, so a little bit of repetition of the first stanza. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks. The his, okay, that's in reference to time. So further personification there. Love doesn't alter with time's brief hours and weeks. So as time continues, love doesn't change. In fact, it bears it out even to the edge of doom. Now, the verb bears is interesting here because that's perhaps hinting to hardships that might come in the way. So it's not saying that love is all perfect and rosy. He's saying, you know, there will be difficult times, but love sticks there, it sticks together, even to the edge of doom. Lovely hyperbole here, sort of referencing a time past the world, a time past human life, that, you know, true love, because again, this is all the marriage of true minds, that spiritual union, will last through life, through suffering, through death, to the end of time. So massive hyperbole there. So, and again, it's another what love isn't stanza. And then our final rhyming couplet. If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. Now, this is all about creating a sense of resolution and certainty in the declarative nature of the sentence. And it comes contextually because obviously Shakespeare wrote so many plays and so many sonnets. So when he says, if I'm wrong, well, then I never wrote. That if I'm wrong, well then I'm not a writer, and no man has ever loved. So two declaratives that are clear falsities. Shakespeare does write, man does love, and therefore this has got to be false. He's basically saying the absolute certainty that he understands what true love is, this spiritual union. In terms of form, it's fairly straightforward, obviously, because it's a sonnet. Clearly, it's a Shakespearean sonnet. So what you're going to expect is 3 quatrains and a rhyming couplet, and our traditional rhyme scheme, the ABAB, CD, FE, and then finally your GG at the end. When you're talking about the impact of it, you can kind of relate it to context, that obviously Shakespeare's sonnets were associated with love and heightened feelings. You can also look at the way that the structurally the topics shift slightly. For each quatrain, so you have a kind of love isn't changeable, then you have a what is love, and then you have a what love isn't, and then you have that absolute certainty at the end of the poem. Hopefully that was helpful for you. Do give me a shout if you've got any questions. I love that poem, so I'm very happy to talk to you about it more. If you haven't subscribed, please do so if you find these videos helpful, but it'd be great for me as well. And yeah, that's it from me. Thank you so much. Happy revising.